thefyrdsman, and welcome to The Fyrdsman. This is going to be the first episode in a new series that I'm starting where we look at the upcoming 10th century Thegn of Wessex impression that I'll be putting together. Obviously I used to do a lot of early Anglo-Saxon living history, and now I've moved into the later periods, and I thought it could be fun to just show you the process that goes into creating a living history impression. We'll take a look at some of the archaeology, we'll take a look at why I've decided to use certain finds over others, and just generally have a good time, I suppose. Obviously by the 10th century in England things have become a little bit more centralised. There's not quite the glitz and glamour, in my opinion, of the earlier Anglo-Saxon period with finds like the Staffordshire Hoard, but there's still quite a lot of nice shiny things that we can talk about. So, there was a car. So, let's get started. We're going to start off by talking about one of my only pieces of 10th century kit so far, my lovely silver Anglo-Saxon belt, based on one that was found in Winchester and dated to the mid-10th century. So, without further ado, let's get started.
So I said that I want to make a thainly impression. Now, for those of you who don't know, a thegn is, I guess, the class between a lord and a churl, a free man. Generally, they are, I suppose, minor nobility. Now, it's clear that by the later 10th century, there have been some substantial long-term evolutions within Anglo-Saxon society. Now, one of these is the emergence of, the first real wide-scale aristocracy in Anglo-Saxon England. So there's a shift from extensive to intensive lordship in the 10th century, which leads to the fragmentation of the large-scale estates of the earlier kings, warlords, ealdormen. And what that means is that there is a new class of smaller-scale landowners who are, I guess, frequently identified as these thanes. So these guys, they possess land, they've got people living on the land, they can extract a surplus from those people. So although they're not at the top level of the nobility, they are pretty well off, and as such they can afford nice things. Now there were a few different classes of thanes which we're not going to go into in this video, but suffice to say, the one, I guess, consistent thing about being a thane is that you're expected to give military service, either to the lord or to the king. Now, a thane's weregild, which is the amount of gold that is paid to your family should you be murdered, is about 1,200 shillings, which is about 6 times that of a freedman. So these guys, they're not messing around. They have substantial wealth behind them, which is definitely going to influence how I portray this historical impression. Now, a few of you might be wondering why I chose to go for a belt before going for something more useful, like shoes, or a tunic, or a sword, or shield, or helmet, or any of the other major items. Relatively speaking, a belt is not that important, but we can see across Anglo-Saxon archaeology that belts have always been very, very flashy, particularly in the early period. If you take a look at the Sutton Hoo belt buckle, or the Taplow belt buckle, or really anything from an early Anglo-Saxon period, you'll see that a lot of wealth was displayed around the waist. That being said, obviously belts are also eminently practical for hanging your pouches, your seaxes off, so I thought, a belt is a good place to start. Now I'll go into a little bit more detail about the specifics once I actually show you the belt that we've reproduced, but generally speaking, Anglo-Saxon art, all the way from the first sailing style, is very heavy on animal motifs. And I think one of the most enjoyable things about looking at Anglo-Saxon art is that you can find yourself spending hours looking at the designs and figuring out what the beasts are and what the images are. Now, obviously these decorations aren't just decorations. They probably have multi-layered symbolic meanings. They would have also told stories a lot of the time. Obviously towards the later centuries, the ones that we're looking at now for this impression, it's not quite as pagan as it used to be. There is definitely still something to look at.
So what we have here is a reproduction of the strap end from the Old Minster Anglo-Saxon grave 321, located in Westminster, which is was obviously part of the Kingdom of Wessex in the 10th century. Now, the strap end itself dates to around about the middle of the 10th century AD. The original was made of copper alloy, but I've decided, because we're going for a high status impression, I wanted my own copy to be made out of sterling silver, which it is, obviously. That's just to show off our wealth a little bit, make sure that people know that we are a rich Anglo-Saxon. Now, the original was 67mm in length. Mine is a little bit over, so around about 72, 73mm, but, same general ballpark of size. I think the craftsman got it spot on. Now, let's talk about the belt itself. Obviously, it is tongue shape. The butt end is rebaited for the strap. It's secured by 4 dome head rivets to a separate plate. The original had a shaped edge and incised borderlines, but we decided to leave those out. So the belt itself is an openwork pattern of birds and animals set in a series of symmetrically placed tendrils, as you can see running up here, with lightly scrolled terminals. Now, towards the butt end on either side of this central stem, we have a backwards looking animal seen in profile, so from the side, with an open mouth which is biting the tip of a tendril, as you can see there. Now, obviously, we're not sure what this animal might be. It might be a dog or a wolf of some variety. But we can definitely see that it's supposed to have hair because, if I just sort that out a second, you can see there are some lightly incised little lines that are supposed to emulate the hair of the creature. The tail of the animal loops through the hind leg to touch the front paw, as you can see there, and then it turns at a sharp angle to end again against its back paw. Now, these paws are pretty carefully defined. You can definitely see that it's got some distinction in there. Now, below each of these is a bird, which is biting the rear leg of the animal with a slightly open beak. Much like the animal above it, there is a circular eye set in a sunken eye socket. The wing of the creature is panelled, and the quills of the pinions and the tails are again clearly represented. At the tip of the object, this foliage here develops into delicate scrolls, vaulted terminals, as we can see. Obviously, the entire thing is executed in quite a high relief. Back in the day, these holes here, the open work, would have been done by drilling through the copper alloy. 2 of the 3 holes are deliberately enlarged, and we've tried to emulate that here in the brooch itself. Now, the original was slightly corroded in one place at the back. Obviously, we're not going to emulate that because it's been in the ground for a while. But overall, I think this is a fantastic reproduction of a wonderful bit of kit from 10th century Wessex. Now, if we have a look at the rest of the belt itself, obviously we've got this beautiful silver strap end. Now, what I wanted to do was to get rid of that. Was to have something, I guess, a little bit understated. So obviously, for a belt in the Anglo-Saxon period, it's quite a wide belt. You don't normally get them this big or this thick, but due to the size of the belt strap itself, I thought it was appropriate. And down the belt, we just have this quite subtle bit of knotwork that goes along its entire length. We've not gone over the top. We just wanted to make it look as pretty as the rest of it. Go zoom in a little bit. I've just zoomed in a little bit so you can see a little bit more of the detail of the belt. I think zoomed in you can clearly see the animal here with the tendril in its mouth. Who knows what they could be? To me, they look a little bit like dogs or wolves, but I guess that's open to interpretation. And you can clearly see the birds down here biting onto the back hind leg of that creature. Overall, I think it's a fantastic bit of kit, and I'm really, really happy with how it's turned out. So, shout out to Caledonian Forge, who made this one for me. He's got some fantastic recreations of lots of bits and bobs from the early medieval period. So, if you're looking for a bit of early medieval bling, give him a shout. Finally, just to show off the fit of the belt, I've included a little photograph here of me wearing it over a coat of mail. Now, in a lot of living history and reenactment societies, you see these big, long, droopy belts that are stretching down towards your knee. But that's
That's not really historically accurate. So yeah, beautiful fit, a simple D-style buckle, again in sterling silver, and I think it looks rather nice, if I do say so myself. So thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing, and I shall see you next time. Cheers.